Welcome to this very special edition of the Rimo3 Podcast. Today, as always, I'm joined by the lovely Samit Halvadia. How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm always very excited about the adjective you're going to use to describe me. Sometimes it's beautiful, lovely. I'll take it.
Oh, yeah. And we're also joined by Vadim, Vladimirskiy, the CEO of Nerdio, and Ben Wilcox, the CTO of ProArch. And I was putting together notes for this, and I'm like, basically, we're joined by the Avengers of the EUC community. How are you both doing today?
That's funny. Doing great. Thanks having us on.
So in this special edition of the podcast, we're going to be continuing a discussion from a webinar that we all put together. And that was on why CIOs are adopting AVD and what you need to be aware of when you're looking to move the ball forward. So to start this off, as CIOs and other IT leaders look to the year ahead, what would you say? And I want to get let's do three. So each of you, if you could kind of say what the top thing you'd like that you think you need to to know about in terms of migrating to the cloud from a strategic standpoint. What are some of those things? Samit, what are you looking at there?
Like I said a little bit earlier, I think thoughtful planning goes a long way when you start thinking about digital transformations, right? Prioritize your users, prioritize your workloads, understand what are the reasons that you're moving to the cloud, right? We've talked about cost optimization, we've talked about accessibility, we've talked about security. It's one thing to have a grand vision, but it's another thing to have an operational and tactical execution plan to get and to achieve that vision. So one of the things that I would say is thoughtful planning and achievable milestones would be key in helping you start that migration journey.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point too, because I think when a lot of people look into these migrations, they're like, oh, we can do this. And it's like, okay, you can do that, but should you do that for your organization? I think that's a key part to be aware of. Ben, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces. One is make sure to follow a framework, right? So any public clouds today, they have their architectural framework. And so that's kind of a key piece to making sure you're following the best practices. Microsoft's is called the Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure. That comes with like a prescribed set of recommendations around that. And so it helps cloud architects, IT professionals, business decision makers make sure that their cloud adoption goals are met, right? By giving this prescribed guidance. It will provide you your best practices, your documentations, some tools and stuff like that that you can use to create and implement those technology strategies for moving to the cloud. So that's one big piece. The second one is, and I often see organizations kind of wanting to maybe go a little light on this, or they feel like it's not a worthwhile investment. But oftentimes we see the greatest returns on this because it gives you a really good plan to follow, which is doing a feasibility and benefits analysis. So what that means is you're really truly looking at the business side, right? How does this, what I'm trying to do here, increase my operational or organizational agility, right? Maybe there's something that helps with innovation, right, of an organization, or is there some sort of cost benefit for this type of workload that I'm looking to do, right? So based off of all of these, an organization can then really prioritize their investments of time and energy based off of the migration objectives and fit. Some things may have a better fit, some may not, right? And then you can really truly determine what workload should I really start with here and before deciding to do this one that might seem like a good fit, but turns out maybe you're not going to get a really good return on investment from it.
Vadim, what are you thinking when you hear a question like that?
Yeah, so I'll maybe go a little bit more tactical than Samit and Ben did. So I think automation is really a way to deliver reliability and scale, right? So I would encourage anyone considering these types of projects to think about automate first. What can be done in a predictable, automated, standardized fashion that's easy to track, easy to monitor, and things like that. And if you decide to go that route, then you really have to ask yourself an honest question, what skills do I have? What skills do I need to augment, either with technology and tooling or services from outside parties to really deliver on this vision? So you can put together a great plan, you can have a great strategy, you can even you may even be bought into the concept that automation is what's going to make you successful, and then you can bite off too much that you can't chew because you don't have the necessary skills and you can't get those skills quickly enough. So really try to balance the available skill set with the tooling and services that you may need from the outside to help you get there.
I think that's a really good thing. And we had a conversation with on the podcast with Yanni and Tila, and he was saying something similar about automation, of how it is such a big part, or will be a big part if it's not already, to how you approach your operations as a business. And I think that's a key part of what you need to be looking at when you're looking at from like a CTO or a CEO or that C-level perspective of, okay, we need to migrate, we need to modernize, but how do we do this? And I think your first step should be, like you said, automation.
Yeah, I mean, people
just our flex. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Vadim.
I was just going to continue what Sage was saying. It's, the flexibility and the options of everything that's available to us and our customers out there is just growing so rapidly. And with flexibility comes complexity, and automation is really that weapon to fight complexities. You can't do much about it. Things are just going to get more complex, and automation is a way to tame that complexity over the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a blog on this earlier in the year for VM Blog, which was, predictions for 2022. And it's all around automation is not a threat, it's a necessity. With the staff shortages, the lack of subject matter expertise, just we want to use human resources to do the clever work, automate the mundane work, right? Like there's no need to do a lot of the automated, a lot of the manual testing or the manual management and cost optimization through, Excel spreadsheets and calculator functions and stuff like that. It's not worth it when you have tooling that's out there so that you can work on, okay, what's my next feasibility analysis after DAS? What am I supposed to do? What is the next step? That's what we want these subject matter experts to really focus on, looking forward, as opposed to doing the boring stuff.
I want to add one thing on there, which is from, an area that we use automation to is to make things not only repeatable on time, but to prevent errors and misconfigurations and things that can hinder your cybersecurity posture or cause downtime or have some sort of undesirable effect within your business. And automation is a key way to really put in some guardrails that keeps your team operating within that, right? And not going outside of areas of expertise and maybe not necessarily knowing where right, if your depth is only this big, yet the overall space is like this, your ceiling of knowledge only goes to here. Mistakes will happen. So it's a good way to be able to extend your team into being more capable, for sure.
Yeah. I love what you said, Vadim. Flexibility introduces complexity. So that is such a huge note. I that needs to be like on a shirt or something. And then kind of continuing this discussion piece, what are some things that organizations can do to evaluate either where they are in their cloud migration or what they need to do to be ready for one? Because I think that's another big part of things.
So I think when it comes to where they are, right, you got to look at where your time and your costs are going, right? I think too often we get caught up in this cycle of trying to modernize everything when there not necessarily isn't always a value in that, right? There's alternatives to that, and we need to explore those things. So one of the kind of the things I look at when I'm making decisions around stuff is, what are the positives here for this change that we're doing, but there's always some sort of inverse consequence here. And it may be a cost thing, it may be a time thing, it may be distraction from a business objective that we're trying to focus on. So making sure that you're always evaluating where you are and not just kind of going blindly based off of a plan that maybe you were established a year ago, because business changes too fast today to just kind of keep in that. You want to keep iterative and keep moving through that process, but you always need those checkpoints to check in and see where you're at and determine, am I still on track with what my initial objectives were, and am I seeing some return on here?
And cloud transformation is really a journey, right? It's not a destination. It's not a matter of evaluating, did we get there? But it's a matter of prioritizing what are you going to work on next, right? And the way I think people should be thinking in general, but in this case specifically about what the next thing to work on is determining what's the biggest problem or the biggest pain point within the organization. And the most complex one. Generally, that's where the biggest return is, right? So if you find the most boring, complex, big problem that nobody seems to want to tackle because of how boring and complex it is, it's probably going to end up having, that's a good signal that this may be an area of the biggest return to focus on. So, that's how I would evaluate kind of what's the next thing to work on or what's the next thing to do. Is like what's boring, so no one wants to look at it, and what's complex that people are intimidated, and then what kind of impact does it have on the business, on the costs, on user experience, on whatever your metric for pain point is in your organization. That's how I would prioritize.
Yeah, prioritizing, it's hard, Vadim. Like when you start thinking about this, people always talk about this cloud or digital transformation. We've been talking about it from VDI for ages, right? What people don't do is they don't look at the smaller milestones like you guys are talking about, right? We've achieved this with a line of business. You have to go back and reflect on, did you do one of three things, right? People do things for one of three reasons. Either they want to make money, they want to save money, or they want to mitigate risk, right? When you start looking at kind of where this cloud transformation is going, have I quantified my last milestone? When I moved my wealth management division into AVD, did I save money? Did I provide a better user experience? Did I patch quicker? Did I get these, a better, there's people are not reflective enough oftentimes to figure out the successes that they've achieved, to start using those as data points of what I should plan next, right? Look at what's gone well, look at what's gone poorly, quantify those things, and then make decisions on the future based on lessons learned in the past. And it's easy to pontificate this on a soapbox, but it's really hard to go back and say, man, I really messed up over there. That is not the way that we're going to do this next part of this deployment, right? Self-reflection is a hard thing, but I think looking back, quantifying to look forward to plan is probably one of the things that is underserved in this digital transformation.
Totally agree.
We need to start a new show that's called Philosophy with Samit in the EUC space.
I won't do any of the work. I will pontificate the work. We have Ben to do the work.
On that side of things, what are some key things that you need to keep in mind when you're evaluating desktop as a service platforms or desktop as a service implementation partners?
Yeah, there's you want to look at the process and the technology there, right? Does this process and the technology provide a method to reduce the overall risk of a project? There's a statistic that's out there of 50% of VDI projects stall or fail due to the poor user experience or application performance or cost overruns, right? So if there's no process and technologies to mitigate that, then there's all you're doing is introducing risk to that organization. For me, security by design is critical, right? We want to take advantage of the new things, right? If you're modernizing stuff, take advantage of some of those exponential technologies that will provide increasing security, right? Not just associate this as a lift and shift, right? That there should be some benefits to your organization and reduce risk in that side. And then when it comes to DAS, right, DAS is really about being customized to your business. Most businesses just don't operate today on just Office and a couple other things. There's other complex applications involved, and so managed services around that and making this a desktop as a service offering. One size does not fit all, and so look for flexibility within that space to kind of make sure that the organization can plug in directly to your business and be an extension and a good team.
I would go back to kind of evaluating your skill set and augmenting with services or technology to bridge the gap, and even if you may say, well, okay, I have the skill set necessary to, do the scripting or be able to automate some of this testing or some of the scaling, whatever may be the case. The question is, should you be, right? Should you be investing your time, number one, into that? Is that the most valuable use of your time? If there is off-the-shelf packaged ways of doing it that have been done many, many times before, do you need to be reinventing the wheel? And even if the answer is, well, maybe you should be and you can, do you want to? You become the single point of failure in your organization who wrote this really fancy, advanced, method for doing X, Y, and Z. And then every time you go on vacation, your phone has to be with you because if something breaks, you're the only one who can fix it.
You're the only man.
That's right. It's, do you have the skills? If you have the skills, is it the best use of your time? And even if it is the best use of your time, is this going to allow you to have the necessary work-life balance if you're the single point of failure for anything?
Yes.
I mean, you're 100% right, Vadim. I talk about this with a lot of my partners as well. It's the same thing. You have to think about it from an acquisition, like even just a company acquisition mindset. Put your VC or private equity hat on for a second. And you have to think about, would I rather build it? Would I rather buy it? Or would I rather partner with somebody? Build, buy, partner. And those are the three options that you have as you start this journey to wherever you want to go. If there's tooling out there and automation already out there, or there are partners out there that can do that work for you, or you can build it yourself, to Vadim's point. But you have to do what's right for your particular risk profile or your business at that moment in time. If you have a staff of 300 scripters, great. Go ahead and do that if that's the business that you want to run. But for the most part, you see people taking this transformation journey. IT and software services is not their market segment or vertical that they play in. They play in oil and gas or energy or financial services or insurance. They don't necessarily want to have to build something like that when they can buy and partner instead.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had this discussion on the podcast many times of, yes, you can manually test your apps, but should you? Is that the best use of your time? Probably not, because you could either do that or, like Vadim was saying, you could go on a beach somewhere and just turn off your phone or go golfing.
Vadim was saying the opposite. He was like, you could write the script, go on a beach, and keep your phone on.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can either have that option, or you can be like, oh, let's use automation. Let's or go to the off the shelf kind of thing. Like, get a little bit more freedom there where you aren't the only point of failure and that complexity isn't the special sauce. Like, make the special sauce the fun and innovation side of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, 100% Sage.
Well, thank you all for taking the time today. I really enjoyed having these discussions with all of you. I mean, this is just a powerhouse of a panel today. For if you're listening to this and weren't able to join the webinar, definitely check that out as well, because that was even a deeper dive onto some of these topics that we covered today as well.
Thank you,
Sage, for having.
Yeah. And by the way, now I'm really excited about the new nickname of the Avengers of EUC.
Yes.
My kids might think I'm finally cool.
I need to put a graphic together of all of you guys as different Avengers characters.
That sounds great. Well, thank you for having me on here. Appreciate the time.
Rimo3 offers automated pre-deployment testing of Windows applications, OS updates, and security patches. Use unattended automation to test and assess application readiness for Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, as well as identifying MSIX and multi-session suitability. Your apps, your workspace, our priority.